Side.
If that's okay, Chair. So if we go back to the 5th of November Cabinet meeting, it set out the interdependency between SIMCA, Council and FDL, and there's the interrelationship is governed via a loan agreement between the Council and FDL. FDL will be under obligations on a regular basis to produce management information, performance information, and report that into the council. I anticipate that company will produce monthly information like we do, and then we report that in quarterly. We talked about having a flow, so exactly how we've got at the moment, where we've got the finance and performance improvement report that comes through to Cabinet. It would then go to Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So we've got that arrangement. Client side would affect that governance that sits behind it, both Cabinet and the Overview and Scrutiny. We set that out as effectively the shareholder, therefore the client side arrangement. But they inevitably will be needing officers in order to assimilate that information, cross-check it, and also in terms of ensuring we've got separation duties. So we've got whilst it hasn't been formed, we've had conversations with SIMCA in terms of how SIMCA and the council, from an officer point of view, form a client side in order to ensure that there's the effective information flow coming from FDL through to council and into those existing decision-making forums. As part of the amendment that you passed last Monday, there was also a reference in there about an airport governance board. So that was a new requirement that full council have charged effectively us to consider how that will be established. So we'll need to give some thought about how that sits within that decision-making framework that I've just set out, because we want to make sure that you get in as much insight and transparency of information, but we don't want to overburden the system so that it's absolute, because it's going to be a fast-moving arrangement. Months, in terms of our monthly monitoring, they happen quickly. So we need to make sure that it's as efficient as possible, so that and it's as clear as possible between decision makers and a more a broader, I'm going to call it church of a broader church in terms of that airport governance arrangement. So I suppose what I've just set out is a bit of a landscape, probably cluttered one, if from listening to what I've just set out, that needs to be formalised and set up when we've got the loan, the FDL and all the appropriate arrangements starting.
I guess from that clutter, my question would be, one of the questions would be who would you look at being the airport governance? Because, and there's no detriment in what I'm going to say, but we have a small pool of officers, and the small pool of officers seem to be involved in FDL, the council, and clearly I wouldn't expect them to be involved in the governance. So our pool of people is quite small.
Absolutely get your point. And that's in part why we've invited SIMCA into that arrangement, in order that we've got a separate check and challenge, given that they're the funders. But in terms of our conflict of interest, that was a matter that was raised by external audits as part of the last year's accounts. So we've taken advice on that matter. The intention is to act on the advice that's been provided, and we'll formulate that, but there definitely will be separation of duties. So there's, just to illustrate, as a director, I will sit on FDL, Faye will sit on the other side in terms of the client from an officer point of view, but that would need, what I'm describing is the more important role is around decision makers and where the information flows, and that is quite clear, to me anyway, that FDL has got a role in terms of running the company. The council, as the shareholder, has the responsibility of keeping oversight through cabinet and of view and scrutiny. So, sorry, but we'll set all that out.
No, I guess it still comes back to the people that are reading the information, understanding what they're reading. Does that make sense? Because we're clearly not financial officers, and we need to be able to understand what we're reading to make sure that we're understanding it in the correct way, because you don't want anyone to assume they're reading something that's absolutely fine when actually it's just buried in lots of numbers and lots of words, and it's not absolutely fine.
So I hope by you've got your section 151 that'll be sat on client side. I'm hoping that Simca from their programme management will come into that, and the people we've been engaging with is the section 73 officer, Gareth Sutton, and it might be Laurie Thomas. She's the programme manager that sits on Simca's side, so you will have senior leaders that have got that ability to look at the information that's been provided and support you in that governance role.
Thank you. Just to say initially, I think it's kind of split client side, making it clear that it's not from a FDL perspective. This is from a CDC perspective, so from the client in terms of it's future-proofing it, because obviously Q1, that's unlikely to be in place, but it's just future-proofing it in terms of that wording. But it is very much looking from a CDC perspective, so really thinking in terms of if through those monitoring discussions there's any concerns raised, then it's in the plan, so I can have a conversation with Pete and said, can you have a look at this? I'm concerned about this. The other avenue that we've got as well is to obtain independent advice still. So we are working with advisors as well in terms of, and we need to kind of be able to provide that and to members as well in terms of that oversight. So we can bring that in, and we're I'm trying to get Simca to join in terms of those monthly monitoring discussions as well. So because the more people that are monitoring it, having a look at it, the better. And I'm sure
you don't sound overly confident
colleagues,
about Simca.
Joining in the month. I think it's the regularity of it.
I wouldn't say that they've got a responsibility. They're the funder, and it will be covered under the terms. Will be covered under the funding, the grant agreement, funding agreement. It's called. So they will have that requirement. It's just the extent we anticipate it working like we operate on that monthly cycle. So it's about their level of resource really. So, and because we've been, the position we've been in over the last few months, I think that's we've been concentrating on other matters as opposed to formalising the sort of governance arrangements thereafter. So, because the other aspect is Simca as part of the apart from their assurance, they've got two dedicated directors on the board, so they will be also receiving information via that route as well. So it's probably just going to see how it works, because they may feel that actually by appointing two directors into the company, then they've already got that angle boxed off. The argument I've put back to them is their directors have got that fiduciary responsibility to the company, so once they're in the tent, they'll be part of the company. That's why they still need to have that check and challenge in the way that we're talking about. So
I think the other thing we've left kind of open at the moment in terms of that client side and that monitoring, and as Debbie says, we've not really worked through it all yet, but it's that I might need somebody, to kind of support me really in terms of advising as well. So we might get some kind of independent advisor really in terms of that monitoring as well. But we need to see how it progresses and assess what we need.
Have Simca nominated 2 directors yet? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they've gone through under a recruitment process in the same way that we have. So their NEDs have, they appointed an agent to secure NEDs, and they've appointed them. We haven't mobilised because the company's not been set up. It's not got capitalisation, so there's the 2 people in the wings that are waiting.
And are these people are they directors of Are they part of Simca? No,
they've been. Simca have appointed an agent, a recruitment agent, to search. The search has appointed 2 people and there will be when we set the company's already set up. I'm going into quite a lot of detail later on one element, aren't we?